I had to go back to my house to get the chainsaw because I had a log like that on my drive.
Yeah, we do. We do not. You know, we had a Bible study at a restaurant in Clarkston, and around 4:45 we started opening up these sidewalk. Kroger's, that whole strip is out of power. McDonald's, Kroger's, the gas station, the whole thing, all the stoplights are out, but our house has power.
Okay, so we do not, and our neighbors to the south don't have it, still have power. Well, that's what Jim did. He stayed home with me. So he stayed at home with the generator.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we have a generator, but you gotta monkey with it.
So that's ours.
Yeah. And you guys have the warden. I looked really think about your trees, aren't you?
Yes,
Are you
we're doing all the big
on
trees.
the east corner? The northeast corner? Yeah, and you can hardly see her, because I was looking and I says, oh my God, okay. I can see it. It's nice to know where they are.
I live right here.
Yes,
You doing okay? You
yeah.
brought a fellow for him too.
Yeah, not me. His bucket's tired, so
I went out to the car and got my pillow. I had one of the nice squishy chairs, and she told me I couldn't sit in it. So I went out to the car and got my
exactly.
Yeah, we cooked dinner on the grill tonight. Consumers text me 1:45 tomorrow. Hopefully it changes. Well, just where I am. Put them all in my spot. I got the old who's far out? Who's far out? You're open.
You came back.
Yes.
You were going camping.
Well, we were only camping through yesterday. We planned on coming back to last night.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah.
She said you'd be gone.
Look it up. Hey, what's your address?
You're right next to it?
I'm right back there. In front of it. I'm 7'4".
Hang on a second. Still Holly?
It's Groveland, I have a Holly mailing address, yeah.
Noted.
Yeah, I heard you have one.
Where's Holly exit? Where's Holly production? Where's
That's probably
that's Aldridge pit right there. Oh shit, it sounds way tall.
yeah, it's corner.
That's the icon here. Okay, let me explain something. So I'm right now. We have a solid building weapon, right? We have a southern wind because what happened to the Fortune Park? Even though we have from California, like this way, it doesn't hit to like East Coast.
Yeah.
We have a southern wind around the panhandle of Texas. Goes up Louisiana, comes straight up through us. That's why all the ducks migrate through that flyway. So we have south wind. So this is, if you had a fire, there's your line of protection right there. It's going to now, once the days that we have the prevailing westerlies with the south wind, it gets this. It takes that out right there. All that line is right to Lake Huron. So right now we're destroying this. Pretty much taking out the thumb. People have to understand how much energy it takes. Now put it out. I don't know how high you get the flappers. You can't get there without right there. Hey. There. Sherry. It's a pass. So we need
100 more people.
Corey's here. His power went out. There's a lot of people here. There's a lot of people here. Yeah. Okay. That's enough. More people. I do. Let me try to call Chad.
And there's
I've never seen his mug. You know who it was, I wouldn't recognize him.
Don't see him.
But
he might be here.
Just curious.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Roll call, please.
Josh Benzine is excused. Neil Lovell.
Here.
David Newville.
Here.
Lynn Shane.
Yes, ma'am.
Jim Christopher. Here. Jenny McKay. Here. Angela Lewis. Here.
Okay. We have a fairly simple agenda tonight. I'd like a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda for August 27th, 2024.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the agenda is passed. Okay, approval of minutes. Danielle sent the meeting minutes out from the past two meetings, the July 16th and July 30th meeting minutes. Everyone has had a chance to take a look at those. Any comments or questions? All right. We good? Do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for the 16th and the 30th?
I make a motion we approve the meetings for June 16th and June 30th, July 30th and 16th. Forgive me for my rudeness.
And I'll second
Second that? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting minutes are approved. Okay, with tonight, we have no resolutions, no communications, no public hearing, which brings us to old business. The reason I'm sure everyone is here is to bring an update on the BEST system. The questions that we've been working on for the past month. So that's our topic for tonight. Jeff, our chairman, is out tonight, so I'll be driving. I do want to keep the meeting tight. Our goal is to let everyone that wants to make a comment make a comment. So I'm going to ask for some courtesies. If someone's talking, let's not talk over them. Let's not interrupt them. I will come around till everyone gets a chance to speak. If we could limit comments to 3 minutes, again, to give everyone a chance to be heard, that would be appreciated. So we're going to open the discussion with what the board's been doing for the past couple weeks. And we'll have discussion within the board. Once we're completed with that, we'll open it up for public discussion and we'll stay as long as it takes to hear everybody's comments. Fair? Okay. So that's how I'd like to handle that. Picking up from where we were at our last meeting, one of the things we had requested and that the public had requested was that we would be open to receiving written public comment on the BEST system. And many people, I don't know if you've seen the deck that came through, a lot of comments came through. We have all of them. I've read all of them, so that is very much appreciated. I have taken and categorized those just to give you a summary of what the topics were, just try to bring the evening together. The number one comment that we got from the public, and I think you'll all agree with this, is that we just don't want this in Groveland Township. I think if you've been to these meetings before, we tend to open every meeting with the comment that no one on this board wants this in Groveland Township. No one on the township board wants this in Groveland Township. This was thrown on us by our governor. This was voted at the state legislature along party lines. And because of Public Act 233, we have no authority to stop this. And we'd just like to lay that groundwork that's what we're working within. Our goal as a board is to try to get the most favorable terms we can moving forward to protect Groveland, Springfield, Holly as best we can. So that was the number one comment. Major concerns are, of course, BEST system thermal runaway, risk of fire, risk of explosion, contaminated water, poisoning groundwater, emission of toxic gases, don't like the location, its proximity to houses or a greenfield site, nighttime lighting, operating noise, and the access road. I think those were the main criticisms I heard through most of these letters, and I'm sure many of them came from you. If you have some new comments, feel free tonight to bring those up. So our reason for summarizing those, we want to keep those in our mind as we're writing an ordinance so that we can say we are trying our best to address each and every one of these within our legal bounds as thoroughly as we can. So again, we appreciate those comments. With that, in the last meeting, we were considering the second draft of the ordinance, and we had a lot of content in there. We went through that in detail, but it wasn't all folded into one document. And we considered voting on it, and instead we tabled it. And what we did was we formed a subcommittee of 3 board members, and that would be Angela, Jeff Penzine, the chair, and myself, with the task of let's take all that and fold it into one document. Get the titles correct, get the heading correct, because this goes into our township ordinance, that 200-page document that has everything from where you put your accessory buildings to lot lines, fencing. It gets folded into that document. So we went back and we've had a couple meetings. We've worked with Madeline Kroll from U of M on the first 4 pages of that, and Angela's going to take us through some of that. We raised some legal questions that as a board we weren't comfortable with, so we had a second meeting with Will Hostler, our township attorney, and asked for his input. So we'll bring you up to date with that. So with that, Angela, you want to take us through the updates?
So I'm going to talk at a high level because, like I said, the updates are forthcoming, but put it this way, it took us, 3 hours to get through approximately the first 3 pages of the ordinance. With that, there has been quite a bit of rework that was done in those 3 pages, taking into account the concerns of the residents in the community. We ended up actually at a stopping point because we had a concern around the lines of when you start getting into if there is a catastrophic event, if the company goes bankrupt, liability, and the whole 9 yards. So at that point, we thought that would make sense to engage Will and get some legal guidance on a path forward. Because one thing that we were not clear on is if we create a WIO and Vesper accepts it, we're not subject matter experts. We're volunteers here, sitting up here, but we're not experts when it comes to laying out catastrophic plans, assessing what a proper surety bond would look like, anything relating to water containment, plume, all that. We're not experts up here. We all know that. We're volunteers trying to do the best we can for this ordinance. So what our concern was if we went through and we went forward with this WIO and Vesper accepted it and there was indeed a catastrophic event, would the township be on the hook at the end of the day for the cleanup, all of that. So if we didn't set a proper surety bond, if Vesper went belly up, would we be on the hook for having to put the bill on a cleanup, which would bankrupt the township? I don't think anybody in the room wants that. So what we ended up doing was consulting with Will and said, if we move forward with this, what does this look like and what do we need to do, because we're not experts, what do we need to do to beef this up? Or does it make more sense of saying, you know what, just go to the state, go get the approval, and then that way is the state not responsible. So Will is in process of pulling together a legal opinion that we're going to assess once he has that legal opinion back to us, so we can understand what we're really dealing with from a liability standpoint, what that means for the township.
Yep.
So that'll make the big decision on if we even move forward with this or not. if it looks like that, the other thing that we talked through, which we're going to insert in the WIO if we decide to move forward with this, is we are going to put language in there to allow the township to retain, subject matter experts. So someone from an environmental consultant that would have background in this, as well as a hazardous, catastrophic cleanup company. And will advise us, we can either work through the county or the state to identify experts that they would recommend, or companies they would recommend. That way we're on the same playing field as at the state level, or we may have to do some research and seek out those consultants or companies ourselves. But we're gonna put language in there to allow the township to retain those companies at Vesper's expense, so that the township would not pay a dime for that. And the responsibility would be twofold. Number one, be able to help us put together, give us guidance in terms of what that surety bond would look like from a dollar amount. So we're not underestimating what that would look like in case, and put that in there for, not in the ordinance, but that would be what Vesper would have to put up in terms of a dollar amount for any cleanup that's needed, catastrophic issues, things of that nature, you know? So that's one area. The other area is getting into, are there things that we can put either in site plan requirements or in the WIO that is more or less what I would call hazardous mitigation? So are there things that can be engineered into the site plan to help lower the risk of a catastrophic issue? Whether it's a thermal runaway, where they're using water or plume, where you could have potential air quality issues. Are there things that can be proactively engineered into that site to lower the risk? It's not gonna eliminate it, we know that, but are there things that we can put into place that can lower the risk? So that would be the other area that we would have the company give us guidance on. The last thing too that we would want some guidance on is as we move, if this whole thing moves forward and as we progress through the site plan, as they start developing their emergency response plans and things of that nature. I know they're working with the fire department and everything else, but again, this is uncharted territory for everybody, including the fire department. So we would also bring on that consultant or that company to give some pointed guidance in terms of what else may need to be put in place from an emergency response plan standpoint. So basically those three things, and we thought that was an excellent path forward if we decide to move forward with the WIO pending the legal opinion that we get from Will.
Yep. And another topic that we had discussed with Will, and it's been brought up by members of the committee as well, is the fact that Vesper is right now leasing that property. They don't own it. And the question becomes liability and what happens. So we asked that pointedly to the attorney. Just quick background, the property's on a 4-year lease starting November 7th, 2023. Property owner is the Sanford Group. I have no clue who that is, but that's the property owner. And according to Will, we can put language in the ordinance that, and I'm not a lawyer, so this may get wordsmithed, that the property owner and the leasee would share coincidental liability, that we can hold both of them liable in the event of an issue. So again, Will's gonna give us a written legal opinion on that. But I know that topic's come up, the opinion being, if they just lease the property from someone and take off, who gets stuck? And the intent is, we will have verbiage in the ordinance to not allow that to happen.
what it boils down to is getting to definitions, and what the definition is, we have to go through and define applicant. And that's where, in the front end of the WIO, in terms, it's a legal document where you always start with your definitions. So that's where we're thinking that we'll end up putting this, is defining applicant as property owner, land developer, and basically, I think it's end user, something along those lines.
Right.
But basically capturing that, and then also too, what Will stated is, the landowner will have to sign along with Vesper.
Yep.
With this, if this goes forward, so,
Yep.
and that was.
The property owner shares approval of the project.
Yep, exactly, so basically, we're gonna make sure that's in there as well, so we got a lot of really good guidance, from Will,
Yep.
Last week during our call, so, based on what so we're doing a parallel path right now. We're gonna, meet here shortly to continue on working through the ordinance as well as assuming that we're gonna move forward, so we don't wanna stop. We wanna progress, especially after all of the good feedback that we got, we don't wanna forget about that either. So we're gonna parallel path that as we're waiting for Will and his legal opinions, that may take a couple weeks. And then once we receive that, then we'll know, okay, are we gonna move forward with this or not? If we are, we'll continue on finishing it up, engaging Madeline and Caitlin.
Yep.
And then from there, hopefully the goal will be here. I don't wanna put a timeline on it, but I know we got a deadline of November to really get this done. I'm hoping we can,
September date's no longer
no,
valid.
that's off the table.
September,
So-
state of Michigan lifted that,
Yeah,
that's no longer
so
on.
that's off the table, so we don't have to worry about that. So we're gonna, and our aspect is we wanna take the time and do it right if we end up having to do this at all, so, we don't wanna rush it.
No. So we'll get the public comment, just, I wanna give the board an opportunity. Yes, Lynn?
Thank you for all the work you two have done, and our chairman, you've had all these meetings, and it must have been, and again, see, we're volunteers, you're not getting paid for these meetings, but they're there. Thank you for all the research and everything you've done, we are indebted, we didn't have to do. Thank you.
Well, and I'd say this guy here, Neil, he has spent hours and hours and hours on researching, going through, looking at all of the events that have happened over time with similar setups or setups that aren't even at the same capacity as this one being proposed. So I'd say hats off to Neil, because
We've got a strong team, we've got Jeff's legal background, we have technical backgrounds, and then we share it with the team. And again, the community support, we appreciate your comments, your input, keeping us on point, so it's a team effort. Just to give you an idea of steps forward, as Angela mentioned, we're planning our next meeting with Madeline from U of M, our clean energy expert, Caitlin, who's our professional planner, to work through the rest of the ordinance. And just to kind of step back for what the ordinance does. The ordinance is the checklist that the township can have for the project, the requirements that we have for this project. It does not approve Vesper or anyone to proceed. It just lists, for example, if you wanted to put an accessory building on your property, we have an ordinance that says what those requirements are for fencing, landscaping, lighting. That doesn't approve anyone to go ahead and put an outbuilding up. You have to come, you have to do a site plan, etc. So us, should we come to the point where we approve an ordinance, that does not approve Vesper or anyone else for anything. It just sets our guidelines if someone wants to come to us and propose a project. If that does get approved, there's going to be a lengthy process of getting all the documents that we require, all the approvals, all the third-party information beyond that. So this is not something that's just going to wrap up shortly. As far as deadlines that were discussed, some of you may have been familiar with the state of Michigan putting out a September 30th deadline to provide a $1.5 million grant for any township that were to get an ordinance in place. They have lifted that deadline. I don't think anyone even stood a chance at hitting it, but that is not driving our pace. We're asking questions, we're getting legal guidance. We'll work through this as quickly as we can, but we're not gonna be rushed at it.
I think right now, we're tentatively scheduled for, we're trying to narrow down a day next week to reconvene and start working back through the draft.
Yep.
We're just kind of lining up schedules right now.
We're about a third of the way through it, I think.
I think
And we've
so,
got some
yeah.
challenges ahead yet, but we've got the legal questions that we could think of in Will's hands.
Yep.
So I think that's the right track. But there's one other point I was gonna make. The next deadline that does hang out is Public Act 233. Takes effect November 29th, correct? I'm correct on that date.
Yeah.
At that point, Vesper or anyone else can sidestep Groveland Township entirely, go directly to the state and get a site approved. Our goal is to try to have an ordinance in place before then that we feel has reasonable protections that are better than what the state is offering, that will make it difficult for Vesper to go to the state and say, this is unreasonable, right? We're using as much legal guidance as we can, as much professional guidance as we can, but we want to make it difficult for them to say, this is unreasonable, and yet have it be more stringent than what the state's offering. I think that's kind of our general plan. So next steps, we're back into meetings next week. The same subcommittee working with Madeline, working with Caitlin, and we're waiting for feedback from them. So, board members, any comments? No?
Yeah,
Good?
we apologize that we don't have like a draft to present to you, but like I said, we've gotten through only the first 3 pages, and we're working through it. I think if we get to the point where we get a stronger draft, that we can at least.
And once it's done, it'll be
socialize and
publicly available, and there will be a public hearing on it before we even vote on it. So it will be made available to you before we do anything with that.
Yeah, so we wanna make sure we get everybody's feedback as well, so definitely.
Okay. So with that, I'm happy to open it up to public comments. And again, I ask that we not talk over each other so that everyone gets a chance to be heard. If we could limit comments to 3 minutes. And I'm gonna ask, can you time, Dan? I'm not trying to be legalistic. We got a big room, it's a messy night. I just wanna give everyone a chance to speak, so. I can't hear Sue. Oh, if you could just say your name and maybe just quick where you're from, would be appreciated. You've been very patient, thank you.
Okay, so it's gonna take a lot more than 3 minutes, but I have a lot of, unfortunately, experience. My name's Fred George. I live on Groveland, in Groveland Township. Friends with Teresa. But here's the problem, guys. Lithium-ion batteries. I've actually seen a Tesla idiot in San Diego. Guy tried to put a boat in the water. The boat slipped down the ramp, and it arced, and the battery arced, and the salt water created the electrolysis. Thing lit on fire underwater for 8 hours. Don't tell me about how safe this is, okay? So now, if Gretchen Hitler did this, and she has the ability to pull this off, and we can't stop it, I'm having problems putting a pole barn up. I have, just coming here and getting approved by her, and she's my friend, I can't get stuff. So, and I'm worried about electricity, and they can put something like this in. Do you guys understand what we're talking about with 10 acres of lithium-ion battery? So a regular wood fire burns at like 12 to 1400, maybe 1800 degrees. You're talking about 3,000-4,000 degrees. A regular dump truck, a front end mover can't get near it. It'll burn up before it gets there. You'd have to do it aerially, drop foam, drop dirt, like Corey said. It would be unimaginable how the impact of this would be unattainable. So
magnify that by hundreds of batteries.
not just honey, take it
not
worse than
one.
that. You would have, so my buddy owns.
Thousands.
He's right. So to do this, to do environmental remediation, you'd literally have to dig a moat and build a bay, like almost like a concrete bay, like a lake around it. You would have to probably have it 5 to 10 feet thick. You would have to set in its own entrapment canal, so that if it happened, because it takes, what were we talking about, Corey, 3 to 5 million gallons you were talking about?
Up to
The
10.
last one that went up?
Up
Then
to 10 million.
that's if you use water, and the water isn't doing anything, because it's a chemical reaction, right? So the water's not actually putting the fire out, it's just stopping the adjacent buildings from burning and whatnot, so that it's gonna burn itself out. All the environmental impacts, now we're residents of Michigan. We are supposed to be the stewards of this state. We own all the water in this country, right? We're the ones that make the fresh water to feed the rest of the country or half of the world, right? What does she do? She puts one of these battery plants on the corner of I-69 and 94 in Marshall, Michigan, on the best fertile land that costs $10,000 an acre. And my buddy owns CIS and he owns a big scrapping company here, and we're doing a Ford Motor Company plants in Dearborn, so we're familiar with all this remediation stuff. To take agricultural land and turn it heavy industrial is impossible. There's nobody in this state that could do it, except her. She could pull it off. So now she's putting it by the Kalamazoo River, which will feed the Lake Michigan, and the one in Grand Rapids will feed the Muskegon River, which will destroy Lake Michigan and Lake Huron.
And Trenton. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Fred.
But why don't they put it in an industrial area? Like if you're gonna do this, why wouldn't you put it in Wyandotte or someplace like that?
Next comment, please.
Not here.
We're open to comments, please. Sir, just your name, please.
My name's Steve Reed from Chincourt.
Steve
Reed.
Steve, thank you, Steve.
One of the things we talked about last time is that they were supposed to exhaust all the groundwater, brownfield sites before we got into a greenfield. Has that been done?
I'll give you a quick response on that. We're looking at adding text to the ordinance, lifted straight off of Public Act 233, that says brownfield sites and reclaimed industrial sites are preferred. It's the exact verbiage off PA 233. So if we have it on our ordinance and they try to use that as an excuse to go to the state, they're gonna hit a brick wall, because they're gonna have the exact same verbiage on the state ordinance. So they would be required to explain how they found the site, what alternatives they looked for, why they didn't choose other sites. And there may be business reasons, personal property, etc. But yes, we've got in the draft, we haven't gotten that far down yet, but we added that state text directly in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Apologize for jumping in public. Sorry. Comments? I'm sorry. I'll work my way back then. Sir.
Scott Birchfield.
Scott.
Just curious, what is it currently zoned? The land?
I'm sorry.
What is the zoning of the land currently?
That's a rural REF, right?
Yeah.
REF.
So it's not zoned industrial, so it'd have to go for rezoning.
No, the REF you can do, what's the?
REF, the suggestion from the state of Michigan, who wrote their ordinance, said it should be done under special use permit. And that's what the proposal was that we were doing. I'm just curious, can you state again where you're from?
I live on Glen Rock Drive.
Okay.
And also, how close is this to the Enbridge pipeline?
I have no.
I don't think it's any, I'm not sure, but I don't think it's anywhere near the
I've
end.
been for a couple of years, so I don't know everything about it.
Okay, it's getting out of here.
Comments? Ma'am in the back, yes.
So, and I apologize, I'm ignorant, this is my first time coming to a meeting finding out about this at all, so I'm just wondering, is there anything that we can do as people, like a letter writing campaign and calling people or doing anything to try to get this stopped?
You'll find many people here in the community are actively trying to push back on this at the state level. Just as a comment, David Martin, our local rep, did vote against this.
Okay.
He understands our position. This was voted on party lines and Governor Whitmer signed it. So, but I think if you stick around and talk, you'll find many people that will want to get your name and get you involved.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Your name?
Oh, my name is Lynn Swanson, I live in Madison, right at the edge of Groveland over there.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Erin Atkins, in Groveland Township. This is the first I've heard of the lease. I just have a few questions.
Sure.
That the property was leased back in November of 2023.
Yes.
Have you seen a copy of that lease?
We have part of the lease that indicates from the owner of the property, we told them we wouldn't do anything until they proved that the owner acknowledged they were doing this, and they agreed with the process.
So Vesper leased a property back in November, not knowing that this could ever happen.
Right.
Well,
But we weren't told that you got news of this in
not
May.
November. Well,
So
when
Vesper
people
signed
lease,
a lease back in November.
we don't see leases.
Please, one at a time, please.
We do not see leases, so we wouldn't have had any way of knowing what they did back in November. But I
Why
think
would
that
Vesper sign a lease?
Well,
And they didn't
because,
even know they could do this for 4 years.
well,
That doesn't make
because
sense.
I think the reality is under the state law, they can do it. That's what we've been trying to say. Nobody in the board, nobody in the planning commission wants this process, nobody is for it. But it's pretty clear if you read the state law itself, and we had copies of it at the first meeting, and if you read the notes from the various informational meetings that Eagle, which is the new name for the DNR, has, that it's going to be almost impossible, I would say virtually impossible, to deny one of these. The whole reason the law is set up this way is Governor Whitmer decided that if you don't like to do this, after November the 29th, they can go directly to the state. They don't even have to tell us why. They could just say, we think you're too hard to work with. And they go to the state, the only rules that apply then are the rules that are in Public Act 233, which in my opinion are woefully inadequate, which is why I was negotiating to get more stringent requirements on it before we got to the part where we're gonna do the, I think, the cleanup and the litigation stuff at the end. But that's why. They have a very high, I'm sure, confidence level with what the state legislatures did. And I said that at a supervisors meeting, we happened to have a lobbyist there that was working on another issue, and his suggestion to everybody that has any of the energy projects before them is, do them before November the 29th, because after that they can go directly to the state. And so you need to understand, in that scenario, they don't even have to come to us. They just go to the state and get permission to do it, and that's it. Which is why we're trying to get this done before November 29th.
Okay, so that's your question.
I mean, I don't know that I'll get a straight answer to my question, but that's okay.
Yes.
Hi, if I may,
Name, please.
Melanie Ivo, I'm going to take you through a quick timeline because the majority of you have never been here. And it doesn't answer your question because November 7th, it wasn't even enacted in law yet. So, I understand what you were asking. So in October of 2023, this is how this started, we became aware, or I should say, the MTA, the Michigan Township Association, became aware that this legislation was going through or being heard in the House and Senate. That was in October. So in late October, early November, they had some public comment meetings, but nobody at that point had even heard about this. But your township did know about it back in October through newsletters and whatever they are signed up on. You know, they get that legislation. So they did have public comment in meetings that some of us went to, and they wouldn't allow the majority of us to speak. They did allow one person from the Michigan Township Association to speak, and the Michigan Association of Counties to speak, and they wouldn't call on people that were not in favor of this. However, they did allow people that were for it to speak at length, some at 10 minutes. So after we went in front of the House Energy meeting, there was a presentation that was trying to be given, and it was cut off within 2 minutes. The Republican legislatures, were given the actual copies of this bill 1 hour before they voted on it, and that was on purpose. And people were waiting around to see, you know, when are they gonna vote?
1 minute left.
When are they gonna vote? They voted at 2 a.m. in the morning at the Capitol building, and I just think that's important how you know how your government is working for you. And shortly thereafter, it was signed by Whitmer. It took 6 weeks from beginning to end on this. This generally takes 6 months and to 2 years, and ask your planning commissioners.
We would estimate it'd take us 2 years.
Yeah, it will take 2 years. It took 6 weeks, and I think that's important to understand. Voting has consequences.
Absolutely.
And all the Republicans did vote against it, all the Democrats for it, and they did it very quickly.
15
because
seconds.
The Democrats were losing 2 seats. 2 people were leaving to become mayors. So they voted very quickly before they lost those votes. Other than that, it would have been a tie, which fails. and that's why they pushed it.
Time.
Thank you. Sergeant Keeler. Any other comments, questions? We'd like to give everybody a chance to speak. Yes?
Hi, Heather Alexander. We are closest to the site,
Yes.
Springfield Township.
Springfield Township. Contacted my insurance company. We would not have insurance. We've been notified that we would not have insurance. That's my number one concern.
Sure.
Our property value would tank.
Oh, yeah.
This is a problem that people are not understanding. They're not looking about the insurance, other things that we aren't even thinking of at the time. This is something that's very important. Our insurance is not, we won't have insurance? How is that even possible?
You know, this is the
And the
first one
power's
I've
not
heard
even
say that.
coming to us.
It would be interesting if you could get them to send you a letter, because I think that would be good to
Yes.
show somebody, because.
We do have one.
And you
It is
could,
coming.
typically, just so you know, if you can prove something like that at the tax appeal board, you can usually get an adjustment to your taxes, so. If they are actually willing to put that in writing.
Sorry. I'd like to thank Bob for that, because I share the taxpayers. So.
And also, our power, the power that's, we're not gonna get any of this power back. It's not gonna be anything for us.
There's nothing specific.
You know, it's not going to the local residents, anywhere in our area. Also, I wanted to say too,
School.
yeah, the school,
2 miles.
we have a school that's less than 2 miles from our home.
And the third one being built.
They're not even aware of it. They would have to have an evacuation plan.
There is in the ordinance, we're going to be requiring a fire plan and an emergency response plan. And they would be required to work with fire departments from Groveland, Holly, Nakfa, Springfield, and develop a plan that's acceptable to the fire department, how they're going to communicate to the schools, how they're going to communicate to the residents. That's something they'll have to create, work with those experts, and then bring to the board.
Will
Is that
Brandon
part
be
of the
put on there?
application?
Time.
More fire departments than that.
Is
Will
that part of
Brandon
the-
be put on that?
I would leave that to the experts, to the fire department experts, and how they felt necessary. So I'm sure they would need more support than just that. I had a gentleman over here first, I'll come right back to you, I promise.
I actually kind of wanted to hear what.
Oh, okay.
From Springfield Township Fire Chief Mac Covey, I live in Springfield Township myself.
Thank you.
One thing I am concerned, I talked to our current board and our incoming supervisor is concerned about training and funding. Training funding.
Yes.
So if any way the ordinance can be tweaked or twisted that says that if this is gonna go through, that we're gonna receive adequate funding for training, because it's gonna require area experts other than ourselves to help develop plans, from suppression to everything. The chief and I have been working, today, this afternoon, looking at some ideas on this, but our big concern, I can say for Springfield Township Fire Department, is getting adequate dollars for training.
Yeah.
I agree the state's got some power with this law, I've read it, it's ridiculous in my opinion, and we're kinda stuck with it right now, but I wanna make sure if you guys can get an ordinance through, that the chief and I are able to train our firefighters properly to handle that situation, including to take care of our residents.
I know at a minimum, the state, PA 233 requires the supplier to provide $2,000 per megawatt, which would be $600,000 to be earmarked for first responders, fire safety, that type of thing. Whether that's adequate or not, again, we'd look for a third-party expert to advise us. But at a minimum, that's in there as a starting point.
They have suggested in the state language, though, that everybody take a look at what other costs are now. And just to alleviate some concern for you, Vesper has been very open so far about saying we'll do whatever we need to do on training. We'll do it every year, we'll do it for all the fire departments. Everything I've asked them up to this point in time, they've said yes to without any hesitation.
And I understand that, but I like things in writing as a chief.
Yeah, it can become part of the agreement.
And I think I could speak for our board that they would want it in writing too, because it's not gonna be just Groveland or Springfield, it's gonna be other departments. And it's gonna tax our communities, and if we're gonna have that incident, we wanna be prepared, and training's the only way to do it.
Yeah, having looked at some of the other fires that have occurred, Oda Mesa out in California, East Hampton on the East Coast, the level of fire, first responder support to put those fires out was significant. And I look at what our community sizes are, and it'd be a huge drop on our community. So again, that's where as a board, we're not experts. We look to your expertise, we look for third-party expertise to help guide us in setting those requirements. But our goal is to have that in writing, everybody knows the requirements, and no surprises.
So, you know, maybe let's make a note of that too, because like I said, I think that kind of goes into that paragraph that we were discussing in terms of the township retaining these third-party companies we need to make sure we have a list or a bullet list of what we're going to tackle on that. We need to make sure we don't forget about,
Yep.
emergency response plans.
Your prior chief got all the information. I sent him numerous, and met with him personally. I sent him numerous documents on safety and precautions and what they put in the state ordinance already. He received all that.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, but we need something over and beyond that. I
Right.
apologize, but
We just need to make sure we have clauses in there that.
Oh, I know,
allow
I've been
access.
working on this for a year and I'm a
Yep.
planning commissioner, so I
Yeah.
sent all the information I possibly could give to you guys.
Yep, yep.
Hoping he would have shared that, and
Yep,
obviously.
we've got documents from
Yeah,
Chief
he
Mason.
did.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, very good. Apologize, we had some comments back here. I can't remember which end. Name, please.
My name's Craig, and I'm in Groveland Township on East Holly Road, not too far from.
What's your last name, Greg?
Smith, if you can believe that. Don't start the 3 minutes yet. So I've got a letter that I'm supposed to read, which I'm gonna do, and it's very redundant from what you've already said. And stuff like that. I'm gonna read it anyways, because otherwise I'm gonna get a tongue action later on. But I do have a couple questions also before I start reading. Is the lease that's set up with Vesper for the land, I mean, as they said before, they're a business. Can Groveland go to them as a business, from one business to the other, and say, look, we've got 108 acres over here that's basically vacant and old quarry, we'll lease that to you for $20,000 a month, or whatever, I don't know. Make up a number. You'd be off the line, which has to run a long ways, and you still get your income, because it's not, and you have your buffer zones and everything else, I mean, but I don't know how ironclad a lease is with a private owner or a business, whatever. So I got a copy of this for the board, and I got a copy of this letter. I'm gonna start to read it, I'm gonna read it fast, and I'm gonna read it loud. Here we go. It goes to Supervisor De Palma and the board. All other parties who consider allowing Vesper or any other battery energy storage system to be built in our community. The request made by the board on July 30th to the community to bring our items to writing via old school creates a dilemma. You've asked us to put together what we want in an ordinance, but we don't want to pass on August 14th. Pass on. To be clear, I am fully unequivocally against the.
Can you slow down, please? You don't have to read it that fast.
I've only got 3 minutes.
That's okay.
You can get the other two that I did get.
All right, to be clear, I am fully unequivocally against the vote for placing the proposed Vesper BESS system on the site at this time. This project has been rushed mainly, as I understand it, for a grant that Groveland Township will receive from the state of Michigan of around $1.5 million, set to expire September 30th, again, redundant. While I'd love to see our state tax dollars come back to local government, I am not convinced this money will be enough to cover costs that Groveland Township would incur should there be a catastrophic event down the road. Money will need to be earmarked for all the fire department training. This will not be extra money, this will cause a shortfall. If there is any problem causing fires or damages or any other conditions that affect the health and safety of the committee during installation or anything else during construction or within the first few years of the BESS being in operation, this money would not even be in township bank to take care of the situation.
30 seconds.
Please continue.
No, let him
Please
read.
continue. Everyone, please continue.
Since the grant money is given over time, we don't have a crystal ball that is able to tell us that everything will be okay and the BESS will operate in perfect conjunction with the best possible outcome. So, we need to consider a lot. Am I up for time?
Keep going.
Lithium-ion batteries are not 100% safe, we know that. The heat they produce must be a constant cooling source, we know that. The energy that it takes to keep the battery cool seems counterproductive to the purpose of storing energy. Sodium and solid-state batteries are proposed to be a safer product. Studies are still underway throughout the world. In the ordinance state, transparency, Vesper is projecting to begin construction between 2028 and 2029. Therefore, before any construction is able to begin, Vesper must return to the commission to provide safety hazard documents on their other lithium-ion battery facilities, which was mentioned. They must report any or all problems, fires, and all conditions that cause a lack of safety to the community for all their other locations worldwide, even if they are smaller than the proposed site. If they are unable to provide documentation, they may not build. Vesper must obtain studies for the safety of Groveland Township and supply a full report from or equivalent to the 2024-2032 report on global utility scale battery energy storage systems. Market by player, region, type, application, and sales channels to submit to Groveland Township Planning Committee on or before the ordinance to take state of Michigan for approval. There's a reference to 13 Kingpin market research. In the ordinance, require Vesper to meet all the items mentioned by Angela Walsh in the prior meetings on July 16th, to include all the items the state lists under guidelines for undeveloped land, such as requiring Vesper to provide strong justification in writing, like they would have to do at state level. Why they are choosing a specific piece of land to list of alternative properties in Groveland that Vesper considered before choosing this property, and how they consider all adjacent properties. How will they ensure the health and safety of all the community, including the neighbors within a 5-mile radius? The wetlands, wildlife, Holly Recreation Park, Holly High School and Middle School, as well as other items that will be affected by this bill. Hazard mitigation and decommissioning must be addressed between Vesper and the Township to include a panel of no less than 5 and no more than 9 residents that will, without bias, review the information provided by Vesper alongside the Planning Commission and the supervisor. For the Township office, the elected supervisor of 8624 must meet with Bob Palma, along with all members of the Planning Commission, and review the report, as well as provide a copy of the report for the public to be listed on their website, and provide copies at their office upon request. Ample time must be given to all parties.
Are we close, Greg? I'm giving you a little extra time. Are we close? I do have a copy that you have sent that to us, and I do have it. I have read it.
You do?
Yeah.
Because you sent this to me 10 minutes ago.
Pardon?
I said time.
And then it's very similar to another one that I've got. You're hitting on the exact same topics.
Well, I'll skip over a lot of it then. Ample time must be given to the Township Board lawyer. Mass mailing be sent to Groveland Township regarding the availability of report. No, this is long, yeah, this is very good test.
I'll tell you, why don't you hand that up to me, and we'll get with the other.
If it goes on, then I just have extra copies of it.
Yeah, if you can make a copy, because we can even take it.
I got an original letter right here.
I got it.
We do read them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'll come over here, then I'll come back there, sir.
Don McCoy, Springfield Township. How big an area, if there was a substantial large fire within the batteries, how big an area do you think would have to be evacuated?
That's where we look at third-party experts. This board doesn't have that expertise. We would contract third-party experts who are familiar with this type of technology, would be familiar with the firefighting capability, would be familiar with cleanup, to advise the board. I couldn't give you an answer. We would be requiring Vesper at their expense to take experts that we choose to provide that technology.
I realize it depends on the wind and, what's going on at the time. And then if Vesper did have to go to the state, wouldn't that cost them a lot more? And wouldn't it take them a long time to get that through to the state? The state's gonna be swamped with applications after this deadline.
But they estimate that the process through the state takes about a year. And they answer the question about the evacuation, Vesper did immediately say, when I told them that our hazmat team has a computer program they use on responses to get an initial plume analysis, Vesper said, when we know what kind of battery we're building and what kind of stuff is involved in it, we'll do a full-blown plume analysis on it too. So they've been, like I said, so far they've been pretty responsive.
California was 6 mile radius.
Yes.
Yeah.
6 miles.
6 mile
Yeah.
That's a
evacuation.
nice minute.
I'll get you in a moment. There's a hand back up. Sir, in the back, very back. Name,
You
please.
get your David Stephens from Springfield
David.
Township. If you get the ordinance done, can they still go to the state and say, and the state
Yes.
say,
Yes.
they're gonna do it no matter what you say?
The challenge is, we're trying to put requirements in there that will be difficult for them to go to the state and say Groveland Township's being unreasonable. We're trying to make it more stringent than the state, but make it difficult for them to just say, well, these guys are just, out in left.
We're trying to be realistic, is what it boils down to. We wanna make sure we're not going to cut corners, but yet we're not going to make it so over exaggerated and over the top where then the state's just gonna be carte blanche, here you go, here's the key to the states. So
It's
we
gonna be a
just wanna
balancing
do our
act.
due diligence.
Answer your question?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, right here, can I?
So a couple things, so I'm Christine, by the way, in Groveland Township, and this junk hole would be behind my house. So, first thing I want everyone to think about, Vesper has already turned companies, it was Lend-Lease, then they got busted, they sold, they're now Vesper. They sell their projects, they go out of business. So, yeah, Vesper can't do this, or Vesper can't do that, but companies go out of business every day. Can you get blood from a stone? Can you get blood from a Sanford Corporation when it doesn't exist anymore? No, you cannot, that's not solid, doesn't even make any sense. The second thing is, crap, I just lost my train of thought. Dang it, hold on a minute. I have to put on a pause for a minute. Okay.
We can come back.
Okay. Dang it. I have squirrels, I need.
Okay, hang on, I'm gonna, that's sort of blue shirt, what's your name?
Bill Lundner,
I remember.
Groveland Road. It would seem to me that our best ally here is the EPA. And I think that probably maybe getting hold of some friends within that agency might be able to lend us a little more what is and what isn't acceptable in this situation. It is uncharted waters, there's no question about it. This is an experiment that they're putting in our backyard. Personally, I like to be the second mouse, I don't like to be the first one. And I am sick and tired of having stuff crammed in my throat. So I say, we fight fire with fire. We go to the EPA, I know some folks, and I will be checking in to see how far I can get in that organization, to see if we can't lean on something in a different direction. I think that's the battle we need to take.
They do have to get EPA clean air and clean water permits. That's
Well, of
part
course
the
they do,
process.
of course they do, but when can they get those permits? What is the criteria for them can be altered? This is an experimental situation. This is not a standard fire station. You know, I'm a collision guy, okay? I body work, and I sell capital equipment for that repair. In a collision shop, we have to give our waste to Safety Clean, okay? So our waste there goes to Safety Clean. We pay them to take it. We are still responsible as the owner and generator for that waste. I don't see where this would be any different, where they would have to absolutely be mandated to take responsibility from cradle to grave. I don't see any other way you'd ever let this thing go. And I'll stop.
I remember, my squirrels came back. So, Bob, for you first, this time I'm gonna start this. In your first video, you made a 10-minute video, and you said, I talked to Vesper, and we talked about their many different systems that they have available, but I told them, we're just gonna stick with the best for now. And if
Well,
you'd like me to replay that, I'd be
I
happy to
can
do
tell
that
you
for
exactly what I said, I remember it.
So that's what you said.
Well, what I
So-
said was, I do not want to write an ordinance for
Correct.
all the clean air options, because we aren't
Correct.
ready to handle it.
Right.
I only want to see if we can accommodate this one and figure out how to do
So,
it better than the one that
There
the
are
state would
other
do it.
options that you know about that they discussed with you, because you said that.
What other options?
Okay, I only have a couple minutes, because you said other bigger systems. He's got a 10-minute video, watch it. So, anyways.
Oh, yeah,
these
watch it,
people
'cause I'd
are-
like to see
These
it.
people are purchasing 63 acres of land, okay? So, from a business standpoint, you don't purchase 63 acres of land to use 12. Best systems are typically tied to wind or solar. So, a comment was also made in one of these meetings that this ordinance would be for this specific project only. If another developer would like to come in and do another project, well, we'd have to revisit it at that time, is what was said. So, what that means is we already know when Vesper sells their projects, and Miss Jessica, or whatever her name is, stood up here and threw a number out as if another developer would like to come in and do something else. And that was $80 million to upgrade the lines. Well, that's a spit in the pond for these companies that just have millions and billions of dollars. So this might start as the battery project, but I can promise you it's not gonna end as the battery project. This is, oh, let's get them to agree to this, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that, and soon we're gonna have this huge mega junk site full of toxic trash in our township. Number one, we can say no. We can. They can go to the state. Yes, they can. I understand what you guys are doing. I respect it. I love it, especially you and you and the guy that's not here right now. And you, because you're listening really good. I don't know about you. You definitely. You're just listening. You guys are good questions. So, anyway. Oh, Lord. Okay. So, I just want everyone to really think about that. It doesn't matter. Like, if a company goes out of business, it's not going to matter what they're going to have to pay for or get sued for, because they don't have it. It doesn't exist. So, we need to really just stop with the stuff that doesn't make any sense, in my opinion.
That would fall into the insurance bond though, and make that bond high enough and make it so that it's reasonable, that can be dealt with. There are legal ways of handling that
That's what
situation so that we've got somebody who's responsible.
And that's what we're tackling, that's why we wanna get a subject matter expert on.
So what if they sell this project?
It's a
Hold
4-year
on, hold on,
lease.
we're getting out of.
4
Let's
years.
give everyone a chance to make a comment. I understand you want to speak again. Is there anyone else who's not had an opportunity to make a comment? So I'm gonna talk to her first, then I'll come back to you, sir, okay? Yes, please.
My name's Lisa, and I live within a half a mile of that site. I'm concerned with, one, if there's a thermal runaway, they're gonna take, how are they gonna, where's the water gonna come from to give them all the water that they need? What's gonna happen to my well? What's gonna happen to every one of my neighbors' wells? Because you can't go deep enough to replenish that water. Two, if you take a look, it is right over our water aquifer. What is gonna happen to everybody's water? I don't care if you're a half mile or if you're on the other side of Groveland, that water, your water's gone.
And it'll go all the way to Lake Huron.
And again, this is where we would be bringing in third-party experts, and we've talked with Chief Mason before about his ability to truck water in from different well sites existing in Groveland. The possibility of putting a well on that site, again, would require some third-party experts to look at it, but we do have that as an item that we're considering, how to manage. But again, a bit above the expertise of this board. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. Three, if there is a thermal runaway and the kids are in school, you're not gonna get those, there's no feasible way to get those kids out of that school before that air gets to them. There's not. I mean, you're talking hundreds of kids. How are you gonna do that? They're our future. They have, you're taking them out.
There's about 1,000.
Let's
in that
let
school.
her finish her comments, please. Okay, all right, are you done with that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I had a comment, I'm sorry, back here in the very back, sir.
Yeah, my name is Huck Green, I live on Oak Hill, right at East Valley.
Okay.
The pipeline goes right through the front of my property, but the question I have is, one, if Groveland or the immediate area is not gonna benefit from the storage unit, who is? Because in most of these, they ship them the power to like Pontiac or Flint, a major city, where the community doesn't benefit anything. So do you know, question one is, do you know where it's going? Two, have you talked to other communities? I was just up at a wedding at Corona Road, which is 21 and 13. And there are acres and acres of solar farms on that road. And have you talked to any other communities to determine what they did, or?
As far as similar ordinances?
Correct.
I've looked at ordinances from other towns that have these. I just read a 499-page document going through exactly every meeting minute from the board, what they did, issues, how they tackled them. So we are looking at best practices from a board standpoint to try to wrap things up. Again, we're working with U of M and their clean energy expert who's looking across multiple programs to advise us to put the best things in. So we are trying to do that.
Okay, but where's the power gonna go to?
It's
Again,
sold
You don't know.
to the highest bidder.
Ohio, wherever it goes.
Yeah, usually,
Wherever it's
yeah.
a business.
Let's say like in Iowa, they feed Chicago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they sell it to the highest bidder, it's a third company
It's a
that
buy
comes in
and
and
sell.
does that.
It's charge the batteries at night while the demand is low and cost is cheap. Sell it in the morning when everybody's running their air conditioner and the demand is high and the cost is high. That's what they've explained to us as their business.
Last thing I'll mention is, I'm very familiar with solar. She's correct, because once they go belly up, as we know, all these power companies the government sponsored with your tax dollars are going belly up. And I can tell you, from my own experience, I have 21 panels on my house. Power Solar went bankrupt. It's taken me 3 months, and I still don't have an inverter to be replaced on my house. Because you gotta go through so many of these contracts to realize the BS that they put into them, that they're not liable, even though they sell you a warranty. But I'm just saying, if the state's okay and it's your our tax dollars that are funding this, I think the community should get something out of it, not just be forced down your throat.
Thank you. Other comments who haven't made a comment yet? Sir.
I am, she actually touched on it, I was gonna talk about aquifers, so I'm not
Name,
worried about
name
it.
please.
Kevin Trusini.
Kevin?
Yep, I live off Tucker Road. She touched on what I was gonna talk about, so I have 3 minutes.
Yes.
First question I have for you is, are the interjections and the sidebars considered part of her time?
Let's just try to keep it, I'm just trying to be fair so that everyone can speak.
Absolutely, I'm just saying, I want people to be able to comment in
Oh,
perpetuity.
sure,
So
knock
if they
yourself
have
out.
3 minutes.
Just
worth
try
of
to keep
comments.
it tight, that's all I'm asking.
Absolutely, so now I'm gonna offer the rest of my time to Greg to finish his letter.
It's not my letter, by the way.
Please, let's keep moving, I want to get everybody out here to reasonable hour, please.
Mass mailing must be sent regarding the availability of the report, as well as formal contact to surrounding townships affected by the project. You should have warned me. Such as Springfield Township's residents will have adequate amounts of time, 2 weeks, on the mailing to respond in writing to the board. Any special meetings or time changes to township meetings regarding Vesper will be made more than 1 week in advance. All past and future documentation between Vesper and Groveland Township, including texts and emails, to be made available to the public with easy-to-find locations on the front page of Groveland Township website. Require Vesper to incur the cost of all the above, and the ordinance contractor will begin should this ordinance pass. For the township office, post and send a mass mailing with the date of the hearings at Lansing for the ordinance to be proposed before the state. For the ordinance, once and done, if this ordinance passes, Vesper will not be allowed to increase any construction or add any BES systems in the future or any location throughout all of Groveland Township. The proposed 300 megawatt is the maximum capacity allowed on the 62-acre site. No returning to ask for more at this site or elsewhere in our community. The area around the proposed build must remain the same. No more than 12 acres is allowed to be cleared for the entire project, which is actually pretty interesting. I recommend the Planning Commission to read Greening the Grid at nrel.gov. Grid scale battery storage frequently asked questions before August 14th, especially the part title, How Are Best Operators Compensated? You contact me for a direct link. Request Alyssa Slotkin and Ruth Johnson to meet with the township on a 62-acre proposed site before the ordinance is sent to Lansing. This offers an opportunity for each of them bipartisan perspective within the community because they both live in the area. Allow their offices, or have homes I should say, allow their offices to time to review the materials from Vesper, the township, and the community letters supplied to the township before the Lansing date. Contact Holly Township and Holly Area Schools with full disclosure of all past, current, and future documents pertaining to this project, as well as all the links to videos and meetings held. Provide the community with studies and reasons why another site wasn't chosen. When Vesper came to Groveland, was the property already leased prior, or was this site recommended? 2 very good questions. Noise, light, and other items mentioned at the township meetings and in our letters from the community must have a study done and posted before any proposed building is allowed to begin. I'd like to include more, but time is limited. By the township at the July 30th meeting, we would have best been suited for all parties to request would have been made at a special meeting on July 16th. Thank you for all your help and consideration. So again, this is back to me now. So my question still comes back to whether or not Groveland can go to Vesper and say, look, we got this nice site, 108 acres. Why don't you put it there? Just pay us X amount of dollars. Come up with it.
Yeah, is that something that's even?
Hang on, Greg's finishing his
No,
comment.
and that's my question to you guys as a board. I mean,
Yeah, and
it's business.
We've pushed back on that to the point where we've asked them, we've asked them to talk with private property owners that own, industrial property in that area. We've looked at, there was the, site by our industrial, at the end of the gravel pit, and it was deemed not large enough. I think that was one of the issues.
Kind of wetlands on it. It's never-
I had pushed for the south end of the ORV park, and that wasn't available. It's Oakland County property, it's not for sale. But we have put some of those questions out there, but per verbiage we have in the draft ordinance, they would, and as well in the state ordinance, they would be required to explain why they chose a greenfield site over a brownfield site or an industrial site, and what their selection criteria were. They would be required to do that. Just one more quick comment,
One more
please.
quick comment, it's the last question. And as consumers' power being our energy system in this area? I mean, there's a consumer's power facility right up the street.
There's multiple facilities in that area, correct, Bob?
Well, consumer power facility you're talking about on Dixie Highway is the service center that takes care of people's meters between Lapeer and Pontiac. That's what that building is. So it doesn't generate any power, it's repair trucks
How
for
much
meters.
property do they own?
Huh?
How much property do they own?
Whatever that building is setting on, it's pretty much from the driveway of the ORV park to around where the fenced area is, that's basically it. But it doesn't make any power, it's just, they send service trucks to fix your meter if it's bad at home or at.
Greg, if you'd be kind enough to drop a copy of that with me, I would appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we're
Oh,
all-
Angela's got that, thank you. I just wanna make sure we
Copy of the
got,
map.
so I've got your early letter, but that'd be nice.
Just so you know, one of my first efforts was, why don't we put this where we can get consumers power to put it, so they're in control of it, could put a switching station, we could provide some power out here where we sorely need it. But consumers wasn't willing to do that yet.
All right, new comment, sir.
I just want to,
Your name,
where's
please.
that letter from, and who wrote it?
Actually, this letter is from my wife. She's been very vocal about
All right, I want, thanks.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Very good. Any other comments? Someone has, I'll come back to this once I get everybody else up. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Angela, you were mentioning an surety bond to cover us in case, oh, I'm sorry, I'm Janice Rupp, I live on East Holly Road, about a mile and a half away. To cover us if our insurance companies will not help us with damage or whatever.
Yeah, so if there's, what it is, and this was already in the ordinance, it's just what we struggled with was, okay, when that time comes to try to figure out the dollar amount, because also too, it basically is like an escrow, right? So if the company does go bankrupt or leaves town, we got it. But what we were all nervous about is, as you know, we're not experts. So we don't wanna pull a number out of the air and it's a shortfall and we're left holding the bag. So that's where, under the advisement of the attorney, that we have every right to retain, expert firms to go through, analyze it, and give us their feedback in terms of what a surety bond would look like in a situation like this. So that's what that would cover, yes.
It would be a huge amount.
Oh, yeah.
When you consider all the homes and all the damage. But my question has to do with the dollars. Are you considering putting in that a clause that addresses inflation? And we have cost of living, everybody says, well, I need a cost of living for when prices go up and they're going up like crazy, look at your groceries. So if you got a clause in that addresses that over, say it happens 5, 6, 7 years from now, and that amount you got is not gonna cover it.
Yeah, that's something that we
We
would
can
probably have
discuss that,
to,
you know.
yeah, we have to bring that
That's
up
a
with
good
the
point.
attorney
Yeah.
to see if we can put something like that in there. So we'll take that back and discuss it with Will and see if that's
And-
feasible.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I sent my thing to you, and it has to do with all of these wordings from the state of Michigan, and I suggested that it be added under, T, site selection, page 7 of the cleanup draft that you had, undeveloped land in accordance with Michigan.
Yep,
State of
I know
Michigan.
exactly where you're going.
Okay,
I lifted these. You and I are reading the same verbiage on PA 233. I lifted it, the same verbiage.
okay. So what I wanna know is this gonna be incorporated into that ordinance?
That's in the draft, and we have it as a
Yes.
team going down that far.
Yeah, very good.
But for the example, we talked about that in a previous meeting, and I took notes.
Yeah, because when you go to the state, if you've got their words in your ordinance.
Yes, that's
you got
exactly
something
why I'm
to
doing
stand
it.
on.
That's exactly why I'm doing it. If they
Am I-
think they're hitting a brick wall here, they turn around and go to the state, they're gonna hit the same brick wall.
Yeah. Now, my last thing, Ray and I went to, we met with David Martin when
Yes.
he was in Grand Rapids. And we talked with him for over an hour, and he explained about the partisan, every Republican voted against this, every Democrat had voted for it. And the problem is, you've got a governor that's gonna veto anything that flips. I asked him, when Vesper has to meet with the state, whether you have an ordinance or not, is that a public meeting? He said, yes, it is. It's under EGLE, which was the Department of Natural Resources, yeah. And we will all be invited, but we have to know when it is.
So I asked him, he has my email, I asked him to let us know, will they let you know when Vesper, and I
I would assume
realized
Dave's been a
it
good
could be a
supporter
year
of what
from
we're
now.
trying to do.
It could be a year from now, is that correct?
If-
Oh, I didn't know it'd be that long, but, so you will keep in contact with the state of Michigan and their interaction with Vesper and find out when they're meeting, and we all need to go as many as possible en masse to Lansing.
Yep. The next big date, of course, is the November 29th date. At that point, the law takes effect, and Vesper could submit the permit to the state of Michigan. So that's when we need to start watching. But yeah, Dave Martin is a great resource. Madeline Crow at U of M, who is working with the state as an independent resource to support us, will know what's going on. So we will definitely keep watching that. And don't assume that we know. If you hear something and you want to pass it on to the township or get it to Danielle, she can get it to the board, just like we've gotten, this information to the board.
Yeah, I think we need to check with them monthly, even David Martin.
That's great help, yeah. Okay, anyone else? Sir?
I just wanna say, everybody should probably go and call their insurance company tomorrow and see what kind of coverage you're gonna have, and have them send you a letter saying, yeah, you're gonna be canceled.
Don't necessarily say fire, you gotta say the runoff, that's the part.
The runoff,
Yeah. Thermal.
plume, everything.
Yeah. That's pollution, and your insurance,
Hang on.
there's a lot of things that don't cover pollution.
I'll let you speak a couple times. We've got another comment here, and I apologize for getting to you soon, sir.
A couple of things you guys
Fred.
start thinking about. Resonant frequency. So, like a windmill, everything around one of those windmills dies. The ground under it, they take that energy down the line. If you look at the ground, it's scorched earth, right? The earthworms are dead. The ground isn't good at trying things. You take resonant frequency, so from Royal Rife and Nikolai Tesla, they taught you about it. That's why they build the Tesla battery. You're supposed to put a Faraday cage around everything made out of copper. That's why the people that sit on those batteries and like a Tesla will eventually get cancer. So what's your cancer, now I don't know what kind of resonant frequency comes off of that, but take that radius, and that's probably a couple miles, 2 to 3 miles in every direction. Everybody in that area is gonna be high risk of cancer, swear to you. And if that, on top of that, you do have this runoff you're talking about, and there's an explosion. The Clinton River starts just south of there. The Shiawassee River comes from Fenton, works its way towards Lake Huron. The Flint River comes off Red Creek here, Swartz Creek, right through Groveland, or what's this, Holly Rec Center, behind your house. So the Thread Creek runs through there. So all that groundwater you're talking about, that aquifer all small tributaries work to bigger streams, work to bigger lakes, work to the ocean. So it's all gonna make it to Lake Huron. So you polluted everything from here to the Saginaw Bay, swear you. And if you go to the Clinton River side, it's gonna come out at South River Road, 16-mile Metro Parkway. You just polluted all that stuff.
Well, they got that big one down in Trenton right now going up between the river and the lake. Lake St. Clair, yep.
Last call, anyone who's not had a chance. If I don't get any other comments, I'll come back to you, I'm sorry. I just wanna give everyone in the room a chance to be heard. This is an important issue. We wanna make sure we've got all the input from the community. So I'll take one more comment, please.
Okay, so I did send, my biggest concerns were the thermal runaway, the surety bonds, the fire safety, the decommissioning. I can't stress how.
We've got a lot of work to follow.
And I see you guys have come a long way. I'm pretty impressed. But there was information you could have had. Your Michigan Township, your MTA, has a really good lawyer staff that they could recommend for you to just ask questions of, that work strictly on renewable energy projects, and they've worked on the ones that are here in Michigan.
We've used them.
So yeah, I would recommend any questions. If you did a moratorium on this, because you're working in good faith, and this one I don't know, it just popped in my head, because you're working in good faith towards an ordinance with a company, could that moratorium go past November 29th? That may be something you ask your legal person. Because right now, November 29th is only if you're not working on one or you don't have one, but if you're working on one in good faith,
I apologize, I've got the specific language on that, and I've got a stack of papers this
Okay.
week, and it would take me time.
For the moratorium?
head of the
Okay.
Michigan
I can- and I
Public
can get
Service
with you
Commission
later.
made some specific comments on that.
On a moratorium?
Yes.
Even if you were working on
And,
one?
and, yeah,
They
it's-
get us, they get us.
Exactly. And I read it, it made me
Which
mad.
way? Okay, and then what were the other, okay, so basically this lease is up in 2028. And none of you have seen the lease between this company and the landowner. Is
No,
that
we've,
correct?
we've seen the
Parts
part
of
of the
it.
lease
A part.
that's, well, we're all, because we're only required to prove when anybody comes to a site plan and says, I wanna do something on a piece of property, the first is, do you own it? Well, no. Well, then you have to go to the owner and get a letter that says he gives you permission to proceed with this.
Do they know
That's what
that-
they did, and
do
they
know they're
included
responsible
part of it.
for everything that happens there? Does the landowner know that when they go bankrupt, when Vesper goes bankrupt, that the landowner, whoever the owner is responsible for decommissioning?
And I don't think they've gotten that far,
Okay.
because I suspect what
I
happens
think if you would
is-
tell them that, maybe this deal wouldn't go through.
The verbiage we're drafting for the ordinance is that the property, excuse me. The property owner has to have approval of the project and shares coincidental liability between the owner and the owner.
But you don't know if the landowner knows that. None of you have seen this
Nope,
agreement.
No,
It's
but
not
that
written
will
in
be
the
in
agreement yet,
ordinance.
is
They're
it?
gonna know when the
Ordinance,
ordinance is
when the
put
ordinance
together.
comes out.
So,
Okay.
because they're gonna have to be
Very
able to
good.
sign their.
They will know everything they're responsible for, as far as payment, because this company is going to leave. It's their MO.
That's why we're trying to push for.
I called the state and asked,
Yep.
do we have to be forced to work with companies that we know have already gone bankrupt or are in lawsuits? This company is in several lawsuits. And they said there is no process right now. Like, we have a, Better Business Bureau that you can call or look at to see. They have no process, and they're really not going to make a process. So, you're being forced, unfortunately, to work with a company that is going to go bankrupt and screw you guys.
That's why
And
it's
this
key
is just
that's
horrible.
why it's key to
Yeah.
really nail down that surety bond.
Oh, and don't, like the state has, 5% the first 5 years, and then 10, you don't get it until 10 years. That, do not, you need it upfront. I talked to Jim Christopher about this, you need that money upfront. And you need to look at it annually and revise it for the prices that are current. Because when you get at that 10-year mark, and you priced it 10 years ago, you're screwed.
Good comments. I appreciate everyone being very, very patient, not speaking over each other. Teresa, did you have a quick comment?
Can I?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm Teresa Bills, I live on Guinness Road, and some of your faces are new to me, some of you have been coming for a couple of meetings, and I just feel like, I'd like to add on to what Melanie was saying about how this whole thing came to be, because it seems, like, I'm talking to Fred, and he's like, can they do that, can they do that? It seems so unrealistic, like, how can the state just do this to us? But what I'm trying to tell people is, Gretchen Whitmer does not care about you, your neighbors, or anything else. What they have is an agenda, it's called Agenda 2030. By 2030, they want 50% of all electricity in the state of Michigan to come from renewable sources. That includes wind, solar, or battery energy storage systems. 50%. What they found was, they couldn't get these things on fast enough, so they took over local control, and they pushed it through in 6 weeks without, there was nothing really we could do, and
No, we
quite
couldn't
honestly,
intervene.
Vesper actually didn't even have to let us know that they were gonna do this. So we found out about it in like June or whatever it was. And, I mean, I'm like, why? So they were trying to get through, and I said to Bob one day, well, the state wants us to do the work for them, so that they won't, but the state doesn't even know what they're doing yet. And so what we're stuck with really is, we'd love to say, we can stop it from happening. But the state has so much money invested in this, and there's millions and millions and millions of dollars going into renewable ready grant awards for anything wind, solar, or battery storage. this is going to get pushed through at the state level, now whether it's gonna be pushed through on that particular parcel or not, you know, it's a crapshoot, I don't know. But I agree that we're trying to get what's best for the residents. Who knows what that can be at this point, but I'm telling you right now, the state pushed this all through, and it seems like, how could they do that? But they did it. So it's like a grieving process. Every time somebody new comes to one of these meetings and they're like, what? They can't do that. You have to accept this grieving process because the state did that to you.
This is what I think the actual answer is. You're going to have them, and I think they're doing a great job at trying to address all these issues. They're gonna come up with an ordinance, and then the real test is, that has to be taken back to Vesper and said, here's what we think the ordinance should look like, because so far on the concessions, every time I've done that, they have to go back to some engineering group and say, okay, we'll do that one, okay? When we get this ordinance done, we're gonna have to present it to Vesper and say, here's what we think it takes to make it work. Will you do all of these? The real test of this is Vesper either says yes or no, because I'm guessing by then, we're gonna be at least to November 29th. And so, once that happens, they're gonna make I would think, a business decision that says, either I can do all the things you asked for, or I can't, and I'm going to the state. And all I'm saying, and everybody's trying to be honest with you, I think if it gets to that state and they say, I'm not willing to do those, they will go to the state, and I'd be willing to bet you $100 right now tonight that it'll put it in, because they're not going to turn this down. And that language about trying to put it on brownfields, and I talked with the people that wrote the ordinance. This is what's interesting. Melanie Kroll has been extremely helpful and very straightforward. They paid her on a grant to write their ordinance. You wanna know how I found out 55 dB wasn't a good number and it should be 45? Melanie said, I told them it shouldn't be 55, it should have been 45. So I went back to Vesper and said, I want 45, and they said yes. So all I'm telling you is, even the people they're paying to write the ordinance, if they don't like what the ordinance says, the state's perfectly comfortable saying, too bad, we're doing it this other way. So you need to be realistic and read what happens in there. There's Q&A sessions that come out from Eagle on some of the public input. And one of the questions I just saw, I think you sent it to me, but I get all those notices, and just so you know, I get all that stuff, okay?
But I attend them and try and share it.
But I get it, and I go to most of them. I bet you I know more about this now than any supervisor in the whole damn state, because this is the first one, okay? But they put that stuff in there. One of the questions was, what do you do? And it goes to one of the questions somebody here asked. If you're working with them on an ordinance and you can't come to an agreement, what do they do with it? And the answer Eagle said was, well, then they go to the state and we probably approve it. So I'm just telling you, if everything you read for the last 6 months says, you can ask for whatever you want, but the only rules we're putting in place are these couple, and they're not very damn good, and you can turn them down, but they can come back to the state and we can approve it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to say, I'm pretty sure this thing's gonna go in. I just want it to go in as good as we can, and the things you're trying to do, I think, are the right things to do. But I don't think you should confuse yourself and think that we're gonna send this to them and then they're gonna say, yeah, they can't do it there. I don't believe that's gonna happen. This is the first one going into Oakland County. We just unfortunately won the wrong lottery, I guess. So that's how we got here. But I don't believe there's a chance of stopping this project. The question is, how good can we make it? And I think they're trying to do that. And if we're lucky, so far, Vesper has been cooperative on literally just about everything I've asked them. These other issues were the parts that we were gonna get to next. So if you develop that and we come up with something and they agree with it, well then maybe we lucked out that we got it as safe and set a benchmark for some others. But I think if we don't, after the 29th of November, you need to understand what the law says. And it's only the conditions that they put. And you can read section 8 in that Public Act 233, and there isn't very much that they have to comply with to do it.
That is not confirmed yet as far as the ordinance. It will come out in fall, but they're still tweaking it. That ordinance is not approved. Also, remember this, there is an election in November.
Yeah.
Okay, so today Ford and GM, they're putting everything on hold. And they said, because we're waiting to see what happens in November at the election.
Okay. Well, we
So
can
keep
wait.
that in mind.
And just
Okay.
wrap it up, I would just want to give one more opportunity for anyone who has not asked a comment. I've had multiple comments from people, try to be generous with the time. Is there anyone who has not been able to give a comment tonight? Yes, sir.
On one of the other meetings that I watched the video of.
I'm sorry, your name, please.
I'm sorry, Valerie Davis, I live in
Valerie.
Groveland Township. But one of the other meetings, the woman who was presenting with all the slides said there's 3 different types of ordinances that you can do. And the second one was, I don't know, it's cryo, and then there was a working.
WIO.
Which is what we're trying to do.
Which one are we trying to do?
The WIO.
The WIO.
But the WIO, from my understanding from that video, is exactly that we can put all this effort into it, and the developer has every right to say, nope, not gonna do that. Why aren't we doing a cryo?
The CREO basically takes you back to Public Act 233. It's no different than going to.
No different standards than what
But
we
I
have.
thought-
exactly
but we could
those
tweak-
standards.
But I thought that's the one that we could put in, the added verbiage saying what we wanted, what we
You
required.
got those flip-flops.
There's really only 2 standards. Both the state standard and the compatible CREO standard have to be the same. You can't ask for something more than what the state said, which is damn little. The only one you can get special concessions that we've been working on is the WIO ordinance. Those are the only 3 options. It sounds like 3, but really it's, you either do the state or you try and see if you can get them to agree with what you want. That's why we're doing WIO.
The WIO to me, I don't know, that one sounded the most riskiest.
Well, the other
Because
alternative
they-
is just to let them do what the state
But
wants.
I could swear that the cryo
No.
or whatever was the one,
No.
that's the one you could put your
Nope.
requirements in, and they had to go with that.
No, we had the same conversation, so I was in the same boat as you. When we sat down and Madeline went through, it was Madeline's video.
Yeah.
She went through and explained that, and after she explained it, it made sense that actually the WIO was the better way to go, because you could tailor it to what you need, where a CREO, all you're doing is rubber stamping what the state says. You're not allowed to make any modifications. And oh, by the way, they can still move forward anyways, even if you have a CREO in place and file with the state, even though all you're doing is rubber stamping it. So it's really, I know, I was under the same impression as you at the very beginning that CREO would be the way to go. But no, she set me straight, and after that, I've been convinced that it's called working incompatible ordinance. Workable incompatible ordinance. So basically, it's on exception basis, which allows you to tailor it to whatever you need it to be tailored to.
Okay.
So Bob, this is only for this piece of property.
Well, the way I did, well, first of all, you can never write an ordinance that says it's only for Bob DePalma. It's for whoever
I'm not saying
meets the
for Bob
requirement. But it was
DePalma.
written so that it would be
This-
difficult for them to take the liberal conditions that are in the state law
But just
and put it anywhere.
This company.
So I said we put things in like, it's gotta be at least 50 acres. So it eliminates them trying to put it on 10 or 12 acres. And that's the reason. We're
But if
trying to
it's
make it
separate,
fit
so-
as much as possible this site without opening up Pandora's box.
Okay, but this
to
will
all
be
that.
the ordinance going forward that you need to have for any other companies.
Well-
Because you can't, I mean.
No, you could write another set of ordinances for another situation. You could have another WIO if somebody asks for something else. What I'm trying to do is not with one ordinance, open a Pandora's box that exposes the whole township. That's why I said.
Oh, you're
that's-
exposed.
Huh?
You're exposed.
Well,
I mean,
not as
Groveland and
much.
Holly are, you guys are gonna be inundated.
We're not as exposed as we would be if we
you
did
two
the
would
whole
like to
thing.
have a conversation after the meeting, that's fine. Any further final
Just
comments?
yeah, so is the WIO a one-time shot, or is this something that they'd be willing to negotiate, say yes, no, yes,
Yeah,
no?
It's a
Or is it,
dynamic.
nope, not any of it, I'm going to the state? How's that gonna work?
That's up to Vesper.
That's the problem.
Hey, Neil, you have one more back here.
I just
have a.
I'm sorry, I didn't see you back there, I
No,
apologize.
I'm sorry.
Your name, please.
Melissa Ford, and
Melissa.
I live down the road, in Groveland Township. I'm new to all these meetings, so I'm a little ignorant, but listening to all this, I like your idea on the EPA, kind of using a different tactic. If there's someone that's on the panel there that's an environmental specialist, being that this is Groveland Township, I have a hard time believing there is not some sort of endangered species or endangered flora that they would not receive a permit because of that.
We would love that.
Yeah, but they've all, just so you know, they already did an environmental study on it, they ordered that already.
But that to me would be a showstopper.
Yeah, exactly. Results?
I haven't seen it, but they know they have to do that before they can start construction, that's pretty standard.
Yeah.
But that would stop it if you saw the results and there was.
If it was, but I'm telling you what generally happens with it,
Okay.
because
Yeah,
we've had
I
others.
want to start talking about next steps. I think Melissa, any other comments, ma'am?
Just follow up with that, do we have, is this something that they're getting an environmental person to see if that's a showstopper, or do we have someone? who can-
We would
we will
have
bring-
the option to do that, that would go into the language that we're trying to get into the
great.
ordinance to get someone on retainer.
Third-party experts.
Simplest thing.
Yes. Yep.
I'd like to, I think we've had good discussion tonight. We'd like to go into the next steps. We've had plenty of chance to
I
talk.
just have one more thing, that's just a thing.
Is it
So-
very brief?
It's very brief. So you talk with other supervisors, right, and other people that are dealing with these things.
Well, and nobody has said they've been approached on any of these, I've asked 3 times at the supervisor's
Right.
lunch.
So my thing is, because this is new, and because it's so wonky and so whatever, why do you guys not have, why are you not gathering your masses and your troops and your mayors and your whatevers, and why don't you have boots on the ground in Lansing and lobbying, and why aren't you making people put this on the news?
The Michigan,
Make them take
the
pictures.
Michigan Townships Association represents all 1,242 of the townships. We and almost every other township pays them an annual fee to do things like education and ordinance research for us. And in most cases, like us, we pay them several $1,000s a year additional for legal battles they fight. So what happens is the MTA looks at an issue and says, do we think we can make some progress on this, taking this one to court and challenging it? And they've looked at this one and said, we don't think we can do it anything. That's why they went to that specialty firm that they used, and we use them too, and said, what do we need to do to try and write an ordinance? So they're preparing some language, that's what's supposed to come out in September. But you need to understand and read what's happened on all of the other things. It's always been negative to what we're trying to do, and nobody has felt they can actually stop this.
So what's preventing from you guys from renting a Greyhound bus, right, and you picking up all your other fellows, whatever you
No,
guys are?
I don't think
and
they'll get on the
making
bus.
picket signs, and
I don't think they'll get on the bus, to be honest with you. This is like when we were approached years
nobody
ago
gives
on
a
one of the,
rat's ass
on one
about
of the landfills. You know, and Don, my predecessor, went to the communities around us and said, Stablex wants to put this hazardous material landfill here. Can you help us fight it? Because we're a small community and it's costing us hundreds of thousands of dollars in the 70s. And you know what most of them said? Wow, I wish you a lot of luck, but I'm glad it ain't in my township. So I think you won't get others joining on the bus because there's not an issue to them until it comes in. And frankly, I wouldn't have done anything. I had no idea we were going to get approached on this until after
I
we
mean,
did.
I'm making a difference, obviously, we got a lot of new faces
We're
here, get
getting
some
a
signs.
little on time. Feel free to have conversations after the meeting. We're not gonna be walking around to the door. I'd like to talk about next steps so everybody knows how we're moving forward with this, when our next meeting's gonna be, and I'll be around for a few minutes. Any more comments, feel free to see me. Our next steps, we're back with Madeline and Caitlin, our professional planner, our U of M expert, the subcommittee, Angela, Jeff, and myself. We're gonna keep plowing through the last 7 pages of the ordinance. Make sure we get the language in. Will owes us his position on the legal options we talked about earlier in the meeting. Don't know if we'll have those in time for the next meeting, but we should have an update and see how close we are with the ordinance by the next meeting. So those are our next steps.
Can we get a copy of the rough draft to review at some point?
Well, it will absolutely be available to the public. We'd like to plow through the whole thing before we hand it off. If you
That-
recall in our
that would help
last
to
meeting.
Streamline the questions, I have called here and I've stopped in before and we can't get a copy of the working document, so that would help with some of the.
Well, we wanna get it a little bit more put together. I know that there was the initial one that was on the table that we didn't even wanna touch, right? We tabled, but we wanna get it to the point where it's a decent rough draft before we start.
Once we get through the end of it, we'll be happy to make it available. It's everything we discussed in the last meeting, all of Madeline's updates. We've added nothing to that beyond those comments. So, but as soon as we get one document with correct headers, reviewed by the planner, reviewed by the U of M expert, with Will's eyes on it, because we were very hesitant to bring anything to the table that Will hadn't reviewed yet, then we're happy to bring it to the public, and before we can do anything with it, it will be publicly available, there will be a public hearing, and it will be public notification, so.
Public, how will notifications go out?
Our standard public hearing notifications, we put those in the newspaper, what's the usual
Newspaper and 300-foot notice.
newspaper and 300-foot notice? So, okay.
From the best website, 300 feet from the best website. Who lives with me?
Oh.
She's got.
From actually from the property line of
That's
the
what I'm saying,
property,
the
yeah.
property.
And then, the last, Danielle, when's our next scheduled meeting?
Our next PC meeting is the fourth Tuesday of every month.
I'm sorry, I can't hear well, so please, I'm sorry, Danielle.
Fourth Tuesday of every month.
Fourth Tuesday of every month, so that's 1, 2, 3, so it'd be the 24th of September, PC meeting. Okay, so back to the board, any other comments from board members? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn for today.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.